If you're tired of these promos, supporters get the podcast early and ad-free. Just go to donate.bogosity.tv for the links to sign up. Welcome to the Bogosity podcast for the week of June 13, 2021, the podcast that invented the dark switch. This is your host, Shane Killian. Let's prenuptiate the news of the bogus. We'll begin with the awesome judge's ruling in Miller v. Becerra, a case that looks like it's headed straight to the Supreme Court because it actually said that people can have guns for their defense. Radical, I know. California is one of only 6 states that doesn't guarantee the right to keep and bear arms in its state constitution. But that's okay because the Supremacy Clause means that the U.S. Constitution applies anyway, which means that they can't ban the ill-defined assault weapons, and the 1989 Assault Weapons Control Act and all of its updates have been struck down. The lawsuit was filed in 2019 by the Firearms Policy Coalition against California AG Xavier Becerra and said that the ban was based on completely arbitrary criteria, such as guns that can hold more than 10 rounds, banned guns being no more lethal than other legal guns, and guns being used overwhelmingly for completely legal purposes. Judge Roger T. Benitez delivered an absolutely epic ruling which began, like the Swiss Army knife, the popular AR-15 rifle is a perfect combination of home defense weapon and homeland defense equipment. Good for both home and battle. The AR-15 is the kind of versatile gun that lies at the intersection of the kinds of firearms protected under District of Columbia v. Heller and United States v. Miller. Yet, the state of California makes it a crime to have an AR-15 type rifle. This court declares the California statutes to be unconstitutional. Yes, it reads like a decision tailor-made to trigger the unthinking, pearl-clutching gun control nutbars. And if you want to know what a certain California governor is saying about this, well, just wait for the Idiot Extraordinaire segment. Quote, "This case is not about extraordinary weapons lying at the outer limits of Second Amendment protection. The banned assault weapons are not bazookas, howitzers, or machine guns. Those arms are dangerous and solely useful for military purposes. Instead, the firearms deemed assault weapons are fairly ordinary, popular, modern rifles. This is an average case about average guns used in average ways for average purposes. One is to be forgiven if one is persuaded by news media and others that the nation is awash with murderous AR-15 assault rifles. The facts, however, do not support this hyperbole, and facts matter." Is it possible to do a mic drop 2 pages into the decision? He pointed out that, in California, 7 times as many murders are committed with knives than any kind of rifle, not just the AR-15, as well as 3 times more likely to be murdered by bare hands, fists, or feet. I'm going to have to resist the urge to quote the entire decision, but here are some other good parts. Quote, "These prohibited guns, like all guns, are dangerous weapons. However, these prohibited guns, like all guns, can be used for ill or for good. They could just as well be called home defense rifles or anti-crime guns. The mechanical design features that identify a rifle as a California assault weapon, it is argued, tend to help a person shoot the rifle more accurately under pressure. The plaintiffs make the point that this is a better condition for all lawful uses, i.e., a more accurate gun is better for everyone. After all, responsible gun owners worry about the ending point of every round fired. If shooting in self-defense, a home defender wants every round to hit only attackers. In contrast, the Attorney General argues that better accuracy makes it a more dangerous weapon. According to the Attorney General, assault weapons enable a shooter to fire more rounds rapidly in a given period with greater accuracy, increasing the likelihood that more individuals will be shot and suffer more numerous injuries. The implied context is a mass shooting. It is not at all clear that a less accurate rifle would reduce the number of victims. A less accurate rifle in the hands of a mass shooter may very well result in different victims, but not necessarily less victims. On the other hand, in the self-defense context, which seems to be more common, taking accurate shots at attackers is vitally important for the innocent victim. Little is found in the Attorney General's court filings reflecting a goal of preventing violence perpetuated against law-abiding citizens in their homes. Instead, the state's litigation stance is more like the view recently expressed by a police chief in Oakland, California. We do not want victims to arm themselves. We want them to be good witnesses. Of course, a dead victim is a lousy witness. I'm reminded of the saying that the gun control nuts would rather see a woman dead in an alley, raped and strangled with her own pantyhose, than for her to be explaining to the police how her attacker got that fatal bullet wound. Quote, "One who merely possesses an assault weapon in California is guilty of a misdemeanor or a felony. The criminal sanction for possession of any gun deemed an assault weapon is a wobbler and can be sentenced as either a felony or a misdemeanor. Mere possession of an object that is commonplace and perfectly legal under federal law and in 44 states will land you in prison, will result in the loss of your rights, including likely the right to vote, and probably will cause you irreparable monetary and reputational damages, as well as your personal liberty. All of this despite the absence of even a single victim." He spent a good deal of time establishing that the state has the burden of proof here, despite what they kept claiming in court. Quote, "The government must carry the burden of establishing that its regulations are reasonably tailored. Since the state bears the burden of justifying its restrictions, it must affirmatively establish the reasonable fit we require. If the burden of proof is shouldered, the government regulation survives scrutiny. If the government does not bear its burden of persuasion or its burden of proof, or does not support its case at all, the citizen prevails. In this case, there is sufficient evidence to produce that AR-15 type rifles are commonly owned by law-abiding citizens for lawful purposes like self-defense and hunting. At the same time, there is very little evidence regarding the commonality of AK-47 type rifles or semi-automatic shotguns or assault pistols, whatever they are, because the government bears the burden in the first instance and has not proven they are uncommon and dangerous. These arms are presumptively lawful to own. The state's evidence is wide, but it is also shallow. It is not enough to carry its burden." He also mentioned their failed prediction that an assault weapons ban would eliminate or reduce mass shootings, and of course it didn't. In fact, as I've shown several times, California is the worst state for mass shootings, despite having a near-perfect score from the Brady campaign. As for the idea that the AR-15 is a weapon of war with a military pedigree, as Benitez points out, so does a 1911 pistol. He just takes down, one by one, pretty much every canard of the gun control nuts. For example, quote, "A law that bans the AR-15 type rifle from militia readiness is not a reasonable fit for protecting the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms for the militia. It has been argued that citizens with nothing more than modern rifles will have no chance against an army with tanks and missiles. But someone forgot to tell Fidel Castro. Someone forgot to tell Ho Chi Minh. Someone forgot to tell the Taliban and Iraqi insurgents. Citizen militias are not irrelevant. For this reason, state statutes ought to specifically preserve the right and ability of its law-abiding responsible citizens to acquire and possess such arms. But to purposefully criminalize acquisition and possession of an AR-15 type modern rifle, as California does, particularly because it would be useful in militia warfare, is contrary to one of the purposes of the Second Amendment and therefore displays no degree of fit." He ruled that the ban, quote, "is a continuing failed experiment which does not achieve its objectives of preventing mass shootings or attacks on law enforcement officers. The evidence suggests it has made no difference at all. Where it has made a large difference is on the lives of numerous law-abiding citizens who would make, buy, and use these prohibited weapons for home defense and militia readiness, but for the threat of severe criminal punishments. It burdened substantially more protected activity than is necessary to further the state's goals." He concluded, quote, "In the end, the Bill of Rights is not a list of suggestions or guidelines for social balancing. The Bill of Rights prevents the tyranny of the majority from taking away the rights of a minority. This case is about what should be a muscular constitutional right and whether a state can force a gun policy choice that impinges on that right with a 30-year-old failed experiment. It should be an easy question and answer. Government is not free to impose its own new policy choices on American citizens where constitutional rights are concerned. As Heller explains, the Second Amendment takes certain policy choices and removes them beyond the realm of permissible state action. California may certainly conceive of a policy that a modern rifle is dangerous in the hands of a criminal, and that therefore it is good public policy to keep modern rifles out of the hands of every citizen. The Second Amendment stands as a shield from government imposition of that policy. The court does not lightly enjoin a state statute. However, while the court is mindful that government has a legitimate interest in protecting the public from gun violence, it is equally mindful that the Constitution remains a shield from the tyranny of the majority. Law-abiding citizens are imbued with the unalienable right to keep and bear modern firearms. This is probably the single best decision covering every single legal issue regarding the right to keep and bear arms, including ultimate scrutiny, strict scrutiny, and intermediate scrutiny. He examines the alternatives, and he points out the biggest problem. There really isn't any evidence supporting most gun control laws, and when you look into it, the evidence keeps going against them. California is, of course, appealing the ruling, but regardless of how the Ninth Circuit ends up ruling, this seems headed to the Supreme Court. This is one to keep an eye on. If you're looking for ways to support this channel, but you don't have any spare cash and you can't stand advertisements, you can do so by generating your own cryptocurrency. Use the links at the bottom of the description to listen to the podcast and all of my videos on bittube.tv or lbry.tv to get cryptocurrency for the creator and yourself. Or if you listen to the podcast at the podcast page, you'll also generate crypto. You can also go to airtime.bogosity.tv to get the airtime extension and generate crypto for yourself and the creators on the web anywhere you go, including my YouTube channel. Get 5 tubes free just for installing the extension and signing up, and then simply browse the web as normal. Easily monetize your favorite creators and yourself with cryptocurrency without advertising on bittube.tv or lbry.tv or with the airtime extension at airtime.bogosity.tv. So we do have some new information about the DarkSide ransomware attack that took down the Colonial pipeline. There's all sorts of unconfirmed information that I don't feel at all comfortable putting in this podcast as of yet, but one thing we do know, the FBI retrieved a pretty hefty amount of the ransom. One of the lingering questions was whether or not Colonial paid the ransom, and it appears that they did, handing over 75 bitcoins, the equivalent of $4.4 million. DarkSide subsequently shut down, claiming they'd lost access to their servers as well as the money. There were suspicions that this was really an exit strategy by the hackers, but it seems not. The FBI managed to get their hands on 63.7 of the 75 bitcoins, and how they did so has been the subject of a lot of concern and analysis. Somehow, the coins ended up in a wallet where the FBI had access to the private key. Bitcoin's blockchain is a public ledger that allows anyone to trace the funds running through it, so they were able to follow the Bitcoins as they went through the system from wallet to wallet. If at any point it goes through a wallet the FBI has managed to gain access to, they can transfer those funds over to their own wallets, thereby seizing the funds. The reason why they didn't get the entire amount is probably due to the fact that criminals will try to split off and mix funds to different wallets to make them more difficult to trace. It could also be that different members of DarkSide or its affiliates received a share of the funds. But the FBI being able to do this is the exception rather than the rule. As long as everyone involved keeps their keys private, no one, not even a nation state, can hack the funds, which raises the question, why were they able to do so here? The FBI isn't saying, so any of the following options would just be speculation. But we know they're not above using malware. If they knew the identities or the machines or the servers or the IP addresses of people involved, they could plan a spyware tool to retrieve the private key and or a keylogger to get the password needed to unlock it. It also may have been in conjunction with an exchange which uses custodial wallets. Since the exchanges have the private keys, then, just like your bank, they can freeze your funds and turn them over to the government. Or the FBI could ask people on the inside. We know that was the case with Silk Road, and it's not implausible they may have had one with DarkSide or one of its affiliates. All they need is one somewhere along the chain, and the bitcoins are theirs. So people might be wondering, how can they protect their own cryptocurrency? First of all, if you use an exchange with a custodial wallet such as Coinbase, don't keep any more in your account than you're going to be exchanging in the near future. Likewise, if you have a significant amount in cryptocurrency, more than you're going to use in the short term, don't keep it in a hot wallet, which is a wallet running on a computer. Keep it in a cold wallet, an offline wallet that could be as simple as a piece of paper printed out with a QR code representing the private key. You can send as much as you want to that wallet's addresses without having it online. You'd only scan the QR code and load up the wallet when you're ready to move the money out. And then you should move all the money out and create a new cold wallet for surplus coins. Of course, if you lose that piece of paper, you've lost the funds. Just like if you lose your physical wallet, you lose the cash that's in it. But you can make multiple copies and store them in secure places. And as per usual, never tell anyone your password. Just like you'd never give out an ATM pin or a banking password, likewise, use a separate password for your crypto wallet and keep it secret. And if you screw up and the worst happens, don't expect the FBI to be able to get your money back. Colonial got lucky. If you're on the Wi-Fi in a coffee shop or hotel, anyone on that network can get your traffic. Do you really trust all of those strangers? For that matter, do you really trust your ISP? A VPN can protect you from prying eyes, disguise your location, and even foil government censors. It's essential in this day and age, so go to vpn.bogosity.tv and you'll be taken to BoxPN. Starting at just $2.99 a month, you can get unlimited high-speed connections to VPN servers all over the world, and they don't log connections, so your privacy is assured. Traveling abroad, just VPN home, and don't worry about what those other governments are doing. Back at home, stop your ISP from traffic shaping and messing with the quality internet access you're paying good money for. You can connect from multiple machines at once, including your smartphone or tablet, and it supports all the secure standards, including OpenVPN and SSTP. Bypass censors and surveillance with your own secure VPN connection. Go to vpn.bogosity.tv. Nowadays, it's pretty much a well-known fact that the big tech companies control the internet, but apparently, like so many well-known facts, it just doesn't seem to be true. At least according to a map by Martin Vargic of the 2021 Internet, representing all of the different corporations and technologies represented as a political map of countries sized to their share of internet traffic. It's incredibly detailed, and the first thing you notice is the giant countries of Google, YouTube, and Facebook. But you also notice what a small portion they are of the entire internet world. In fact, while there are some other big areas like Yahoo, Microsoft, and Wikipedia, and some other Chinese companies like Tencent QQ, Tmall, and Taobao, most of it represents these tiny little areas that make Luxembourg look like its own continent. The waterways have these wonderful names like Protocol Ocean, Preset Sea, and QWERTY Sea. He even went with the puns I Can See and IP Strait. What's really interesting is when you compare it to the previous map he made in 2014. While Google is still prominent, Facebook and Amazon were much bigger, and Microsoft and Apple have a prominence they now lack. It goes back to what we keep saying. Everyone seems to think, thanks to normalcy bias, that it was always the case that Facebook, Google, and Amazon rule the roost, and that they're natural monopolies that we just absolutely need government to come in and break up and regulate or whatever. But given how much things have changed since just 2014, it's easy to see how fallacious that is. And for an even better idea, I'm including a link to an XKCD comic that, from what I can tell, was the first attempt at doing this in map form. The biggest country is by far MySpace. This absolutely relates to the brilliance of Section 230. If you're worried about the big companies taking over the internet, repealing or gutting Section 230 would be a great way to do it. Most of the internet, then and now, represents smaller sites and technologies in an ever-changing landscape. Section 230 is what keeps it that way. Do you have children, or nieces or nephews? Are you homeschooling, or just want to counter some of the socialist indoctrination most children get in school? If so, go to Bogosity.tv/TuttleTwins, and you'll be taken to a website where you can get some great books for elementary-aged children. The Tuttle Twins books are books about liberty and free market economics that include children's versions of Bastiat's The Law, Leonard Read's I, Pencil, and Hayek's The Road to Serfdom, as well as books about the Federal Reserve and how regulations protect business cronies. They'll learn about the harm caused by eminent domain, or regulations passed in the name of safety, and fundamental concepts of liberty. And as you can see from the sample pages on the website, they're all easy to read and nicely illustrated. They're just $9.99 a piece, or get a special discount as well as free bonuses when you purchase all 5. You can even buy in bulk to donate to schools and local libraries. So get the Tuttle Twins books at Bogosity.tv/TuttleTwins. And now it's time to inculcate this week's biggest Bogon emitter. And this week it goes to Jared Woodfill, an anti-vax lawyer who just hates the idea that hospital staff might be required to get the COVID vaccine. Houston Methodist has 25,000 staff members who have been fully inoculated after passing the requirement in April. They've suspended 178 staff members who have refused to abide by the mandate and who don't have a religious or medical exemption and didn't receive a deferral. According to the hospital's president, Dr. Mark Boom, quote, "We won't have the final numbers for 2 weeks as employees can still get vaccinated with their second dose or with the 1-dose Johnson & Johnson vaccine. I wish the number could be 0, but unfortunately, a small number of individuals have decided not to put their patients first." He said it was a difficult decision, but he had to protect, quote, "our patients, your colleagues, your families, and our community. The science proves that the vaccines are not only safe, but necessary if we're going to turn the corner against COVID-19. The mRNA technology behind the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines isn't new or experimental. It's been around for many years." But some of the whiny little babies pitched a fit, like emergency room nurse Amanda Riviera, who said, quote, "I feel like they kind of bullied us into this little corner, like you have to do it or you don't have a job. This is my only source of income." Then get the jab. For the love of Mike, lady, you work in a hospital. So ambulance chaser Woodfill saw an opportunity and filed a lawsuit claiming that the vaccines were experimental because they didn't have the holy declaration of the sainted FDA. Quote, "None of the currently available experimental vaccines for COVID-19 has received final approval from the FDA. Because the FDA generally requires years of bureaucracy and paperwork. But there's nothing experimental about vaccines that have been given hundreds of millions of times with astoundingly few adverse reactions and conclusively shown to be over 90% effective." The shyster said, quote, "Essentially, Dr. Boom is requiring my clients to serve as human guinea pigs, and if they're not, they're taken to the door. There's no choice. It's all about coercion, all about pressure." No, you pettifogger. It's about keeping your customers safe. It's no more coercion than being pressured to wear plastic gloves when you make sandwiches at the deli. He accused Boom of putting profits over people. Quote, "It's clearly about the bottom line, but not about the people who put their lives on the line. This is how they're repaid, with a pink slip." Yeah, how horrible that evil capitalism is, making people immune to a terrible disease so they don't give it to sick people that they have a duty of care to. So all of that makes Jared Woodfill this week's biggest Bogon emitter. I want to tell you about the eyeglasses I've been wearing for years. As people can see on my videos, I have a very strong prescription, which makes glasses more expensive, especially when I need computer glasses, reading glasses, prescription sunglasses, and most expensively, progressive lenses for general everyday wear. To save money while still getting quality glasses, I get them from Firmoo. In fact, I just got a pair of progressives with high-index aspherical lenses and a nice pair of frames my wife loves for just over $100. It would have been $500 to get them through my eye doctor. Not only do they look good, the glasses are durable. I've worn many pairs for several years without problems. All orders come with a 30-day return policy, a 3-month warranty, and one-on-one customer service. Go to Firmoo, that's FIRMOO.Bogosity.tv anytime you need quality glasses at a low price. Once again, that's Firmoo.Bogosity.tv. And now let's boardinate this week's Idiot Extraordinaire. And once again, it goes to California Governor Gavin Newsom, but for once, it isn't about COVID-19. It's about the court case we covered back in the first segment, where a judge struck down California's assault weapons ban. Newsom, who apparently hadn't even read the decision, repeated the debunked lie about being a weapon of war and said, quote, "Today's decision is a direct threat to public safety and the lives of innocent Californians, period." Notice that he didn't say, "This decision is legally incorrect and here's why." He said that the AR-15, a varmint gun used mostly for sporting purposes, is, quote, "a weapon of war that's used in the battlefield." So his understanding of firearms is every bit as lacking as his understanding of the Constitution. He also called the judge a, quote, "wholly owned subsidiary of the gun lobby and the National Rifle Association." Newsom, let us know when you have an actual argument and not ad hominem poisoning the well, fear-mongering, and appeal to emotion. And it was the Firearms Policy Coalition, which the NRA has very little to do with. Quote, "We're not backing down from this fight, and we'll continue pushing for common-sense gun laws that will save lives." Well, let us know when you actually come up with one of those. The assault weapons ban, as the judge showed pretty darn conclusively, certainly doesn't qualify. Also, remember that assault weapon is a term made up by politicians. The only time a manufacturer or military ever actually used the term, it was about a grenade launcher. It also drew a lot of whinging from people who hadn't read past the first sentence. As for Newsom, he took to Twitter to say, quote, "CA's assault weapon ban has saved countless lives." Citation needed, brah. C.D. Michelle, president of the California Rifle and Pistol Association, said, quote, "Gavin Newsom's Department of Justice had the opportunity to present its facts in court and failed to do so. Now that Judge Benitez ruled against Gavin Newsom, he is shamefully attacking a federal judge with politicized falsehoods because Newsom got a result he didn't like. Newsom can stomp his feet all he wants, but the Constitution will win the day." Also, keep in mind that U.S. v. Miller, no relation, in 1939 said that they could ban guns that weren't weapons of war because the Second Amendment only covered military-style weapons since it was about citizens forming militias. So now they've got all these stupid restrictions against sawed-off shotguns and suppressors and things like that. They're now saying that they do need to ban weapons of war. So if it's not a weapon of war, you can ban it. If it is a weapon of war, you can ban it. So they want to ban guns. Never believe them when they deny that. It's been shown to be a lie over and over and over again. And also note that a lot of Californians are gun owners who would love to own an AR-15. And Newsom has a recall election coming up in November. So all of that makes Gavin Newsom this week's Idiot Extraordinaire. Well, that wraps up this "Oh my God, he's turned into a homicidal axe-wielding maniac" edition of the Bogosity podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please go to donate.bogosity.tv for several ways to support and discord.bogosity.tv to join the discussion. Subscribe at Patreon or Subscribestar and you can listen early and ad-free. Thank you for listening. Until next time, here's a quote from Edward Abbey. "The tank, the B-52, the fighter bomber, the state-controlled police and military are the weapons of dictatorship. The rifle is the weapon of democracy." The Bogosity podcast is licensed under Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License.
Bogosity.
We live in a world where light bulbs connect to the internet, and recent attacks on them prove that your online security is under threat like never before. Not only your websites, but the internet-enabled devices you buy. And the biggest problem is weak passwords. That's why you need LastPass. LastPass allows you to randomly generate strong, unique passwords on the web and on your internet-enabled devices, all protected by one master password. LastPass sets up in minutes and gives you secure automatic logins throughout the web, synchronizing across all your browsers, all your computers, and even your mobile devices, at home, at work, or on the road. It even securely stores sensitive form data, including credit card numbers, backup sensitive documents, software licenses, Wi-Fi logins, and more. And with LastPass Premium, you can get these benefits on other applications, manage passwords for your entire family, and also get priority customer support. Sign up at password.bogosity.tv for a free month of LastPass Premium. Log in securely everywhere using the last password you'll ever have to remember. Go to password.bogosity.tv and get LastPass now.